Welcome back. This week of Missouri Politics, State of the State edition from right outside Governor Mike Kehoe's office. We are now joined by State Senator Brian Williams. Brian, thank you so much for the time.
Scott, it's good to be back. It's been a long time.
Yeah, you've been gone. It was weird. You were back all summer and fall. Now you actually took a couple months off.
Well, it wasn't that. I did not take a couple months off. I've been focused on St. Louis County.
Took a couple months off and come to Jeff City is what I'm talking about.
Yes, I've been very deep into serving my constituents back home in St. Louis.
As a state senator, you're on the front row for the speech. Mm-hmm. What'd you think?
Well, one, I think it was important that the governor talk about tough issues. He talked about income tax. He talked about issues around how do we address challenges with our workforce. He also talked about some issues that's a little bit controversial, but I believe we can work through it, and that's education. So I was pleased that the governor recognized that voters should have a say with our tax policies and whether or not taxes should increase for them. And I think it was also really good that the governor recognized that the legislature plays a big role in getting a lot of these things done.
I liked how he has plans, but he actually can walk you through the downsides and how he got there. It's not just some bold, crazy thing with it's not thought through. I like how when Mike Kehoe laid out his plans for the state this year, they were actually seemed to be, whether people agree with the outcome or not, they're actually thought through. And I think that gives a lot of credibility to whichever side of the aisle is listening to it.
Yeah, and I think it's important to notice that this is also a governor who's had quite a bit of experience with the legislature.
Yeah.
And being able to work through processes and understanding how government works and how to deliver from that capacity really gives you a unique perspective as an executive. And I do think the governor leaned in on that, even if it's issues that I may not always agree with.
One of the things you mentioned that he emphasized in the speech was workforce development. You filed a few bills this session to address that. How do you view it? Where do you think you can work together? What did you file?
Well, this workforce development process has been something we've worked on for several years now. What we've recognized, not only in the state of Missouri, but in particular the St. Louis region, how do we grow our workforce? How do we attract businesses? And most important, how do we get people working and making a quality wage to support their families? That's something that's been extremely important to so many residents in St. Louis County and beyond. And I'm really optimistic about the opportunity to be able to work around issues with geospatial intelligence, with NGA coming to St. Louis. They just built a $2.5 billion facility. People don't talk about it enough. And I know we'll get into public safety, but I would like to create opportunities to attract people to professions like law enforcement, to be able to serve communities that reflect their officers. So there's so many opportunities to grow our county around the workforce. And I think as a state senator, prioritizing growing our economy has been something that's been really important to me.
It's interesting. People talk about get a business degree and all that, and those are wonderful things. But if you want to start work on day one, go learn to weld. And you'll never want for work a day in your life. There's a lot of workforce development that may not be your traditional four-year colleges, but you can make more money than a lot of folks that go to four-year college. If you get a trade, and it's a good trade, and you learn it well, you're never going to want for work.
Well, that's an understatement. Right now, post-pandemic, we've seen industries like construction, the trades, go through the roof. Not only are they good paying jobs, but they're allowing people to make more money than they've made in their entire life. And they're actually going into a profession that doesn't force them to become financially insecure by taking out student loan debt. And most importantly, going to a four-year institution when they can go into their career immediately after high school. So I'm dug into figuring out how do we grow a workforce that's not contingent on just going to college. And most importantly, how do we do it and ensure that Missourians are not financially insecure in the process?
Pipe fitters have one of the greatest training centers I've ever seen. If you go through that training center, it's not are you going to get a job? It's which company are you going to pick? It goes from you interviewing to companies interviewing you. There's a whole different part of workforce development that I think people initially think a four-year business degree, but you don't have to go down that road to get a good job.
No, you don't. And I think it's important to really recognize the fact that we should be investing in our skilled workforce. We should be investing in individuals that want to go in and make a quality wage to support their families. And I think also it's imperative that we recognize the importance of being able to get people ready to work day one. And I think there's been so much red tape between people getting a job, whether they're forced to go through a program that's expensive, or they spend several years of their life pursuing a degree when they could have went directly into a profession, again, that'll allow them to not only make good money, but take care of their families.
You filed a bill about property taxes. That, I tell you, the talk of Jeff City today is income tax. When I go around the state, I hear people talk about property tax. And when I hear people from St. Louis County talk, they talk about the extremely high property taxes. You filed a bill that deals with that and maybe gives folks a little bit more rights in the process.
Well, not only does it do that, Scott, it's important to know that affordability should be something that should be at the front of all our minds. And we're seeing a lot of people that are struggling right now. And a lot of them are struggling to stay in their homes. I think about so many seniors that are getting phased out of their homes because their taxes exceed the value of their home, and they're on fixed incomes. I've seen stories where people are filing assessment repeals, and it's so convoluted, it's so complex. They don't know where to start. And these are people that already don't have the time or the resources to be able to go through this process. So what our bill will do is make the process more transparent, make it easy to work through, make it easy to read your valuation, and most importantly, give you an extension on being able to file an appeal to determine whether or not your property tax assessment is even correct. And with a bill that I sponsored a year ago, providing the senior tax freeze for seniors to get relief, they don't even know whether or not they have the credit to determine whether or not their bill is even accurate in the first place if they get it on time. So we think this is going to contribute directly to affordability, and we think this is going to be something that's going to enhance the quality of life for people in St. Louis County and beyond.
Isn't it a heartbreaking thing? Somebody that spends their money right, they work hard, maybe they're retired, they live on a fixed income, they go through their life and they pay their bills, and they have their budget set. But over the last 5 years, the property taxes and the overassessments, it's not that they're not budgeting their money right. It's that the overassessments are driving them out of that home. It's not that they can't pay their mortgage. It's that they can't pay their taxes.
Well, I think about individuals like my grandparents who mean a lot to me. And I've heard on countless instances where we as a family today have to step in and help with bills and help with finances because the taxes have really become excessive. And we know that we have an aging population in Missouri, and that's a population that deserves to stay in their homes. They shouldn't be kicked out. And one of the ways that we can address that aging population staying in their home is making sure it's affordable and also making sure the process is transparent. And if you have a transparent process that allows people to be able to keep money in their pocket and not lose money, I think it makes all the difference.
It's your last session. When you look back on these 8 years, what have been the greatest challenges? What will you remember from your tenure here?
Well, it's been a tremendous ride for me. And I think about a couple things. One, my job as I prepare to leave and head back to St. Louis is how do I prepare the Senate to be better after I leave than it was when I came in? And that's by supporting new leaders, allowing fresh ideas to come to the Senate, and most importantly, value the institution, which is something that's given so much to me. Building relationships.
September, it looked like the institution was devalued.
Absolutely.
The way the rules were changed, the way there was something put on in a constitutional amendment put on the ballot with no debate. It does feel like your caucus has a role this session to make a point about the institution, but also the almost impossible tightrope to walk of not going too far.
Well, something I've done my entire career was build relationships, collaborate, and work through processes and systems to deliver back to my district and make the state of Missouri better. And it's going to be important that the Democrats continue to remind our Republican colleagues that the Senate is not only an institution built on relationships, but it's built on rules and procedures. And those rules cannot be violated at the expense of pushing an agenda for any issue or anybody outside of the Senate.
There is no issue that's bigger than the institution of the Missouri Senate.
And there's no person bigger than the institution. And that's something I've learned, to recognize the importance of the institution, respect the body, and respect my colleagues. And it's going to be a priority for me to not only bring back that dignity and respect, but also remind new senators that this is a relationship business. It is not about partisan disagreements and not working through issues in a way that our constituents expect us to.
public safety is an issue that I think it's honestly, you're in a tough spot sometimes. You have to be candid with folks about law enforcement, its relationship with communities, and be candid with people that want to live in a safe neighborhood. That's an issue you've worked on from the beginning, and I've seen in your latest endeavor, you've got a lot of support in that community.
Well, law enforcement plays a big role, and I think immediately about my uncle, who served 27 years as a police officer in the city of St. Louis. And he retired simply because the job was dangerous, it was high stress, and my family was deeply concerned about his welfare. There's so many families that live that reality. So providing law enforcement with the tools to not only do the job safely, but most importantly, build a relationship with the community. And when I got to the Senate, I recognized post-George Floyd, clearly Ferguson, a community I represent and grew up in. It was no secret that we needed to build the relationship between law enforcement and the community. And we passed legislation that allowed us not only to build that trust, give law enforcement tools to do their job safely, but also we established a relationship of trust and recognized that public safety should always be at the forefront of our minds when we think about our residents and our constituents.
Since you came to the Senate, folks have been clamoring for what you're going to do next. There's been, Brian Wayne's going to run for this, run for that, U.S. Senate, Congress, whatever. You've now decided to run for county executive. Take us through your and Lindsay's decision as a family to make this run.
Well, I'll start here. As a state senator, I've had an opportunity to work through processes, understand policy and legislation, and most importantly, execute and deliver resources back to St. Louis County, whether it's the demolition of Jamestown Mall, money to be able to build a new public safety facility, or being able to advocate for workforce development. Working through that process and delivering back to St. Louis is something that I think is going to be really important when we think about the fact that the region makes up 45% of the GDP. So every investment that goes into the city of St. Louis, and in particular St. Louis County, only creates a positive impact for the entire state of Missouri. So I'm excited about the opportunity to get in front of voters, talk about my record of being able to deliver back to St. Louis County, but also bring fresh ideas. I think our region has been stagnant. It has had a very difficult time telling its story, and I think the perception of coming in second has been a leadership problem, and I'm excited to tell our story better. And most importantly, deliver and work through processes to ensure that quality services and the quality of life for St. Louis County residents is growing.
State Senator Brian Williams, thank you for the time. Good luck in the campaign.
Thank you so much, God. It's good to be here.